A handful of new sci-fi and thriller type shows, as well as a brand new social distancing comedy on NBC. We're going to review it all, plus talk about the demise of Quibi this week. Hey guys, Dan here. Welcome to this week's TV News and Reviews. Thank you for joining me. I know most of you guys that usually watch this have already subscribed, so I do appreciate that. If you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe below or like this video. That helps out the channel as well. There's not a lot of news to talk about, but a big one is the demise of Quibi, so we'll get to that. But first, let's talk about our usual renewals and cancellations up front. So, renewed this week, two shows that I do not watch, but have always heard good things about. One is Archer on FXX. Believe it or not, Archer is going into its 12th season. Season 11, which I think aired in the fall, had a 36% increase from the year before. So obviously people are still finding this show, people are still loving this show, and there you go. I've always heard that I would really enjoy Archer. So one of these days I will have to sit down and at least sample it, see if it does the trick. And then Miracle Workers on TBS, that is going to enter season 3. Now that's sort of more of an anthology series. Each season is a different sort of event, I guess, in time. Or maybe not event in time, but place in time, I guess you could say. Daniel Radcliffe leads that cast, and the cast is the same from season to season, but just their situations are different. I guess they play different characters, too, I'm not sure. But this time around, season 3, they're going to go to 1844, and it's going to focus on the Oregon Trail. So that could be interesting, and this is a comedy show, so I'm sure they mine, some of the illnesses, cholera and whatnot, on the Oregon Trail for some laughs. And then the cancellations, just one this week, but this is kind of a bummer because I really saw some potential in this show. I reviewed it just a few weeks ago, really. It just went up on Netflix in September, and that is Away, the new Hilary Swank sci-fi show. She plays an astronaut. I thought there was a lot of potential here, but this, I think, is less of a victim of sort of Corona stuff, but more that the cost per episode just didn't really match up with the ratings. It did, pretty well. It made number 2 on Netflix's top 10, and it was in the top 10 for several weeks. Some people were talking about it, but this is the kind of show where I feel like the budgets were probably pretty huge on it. I don't know that for sure. The article I read didn't mention that, but I just think that, just with all the space stuff and probably Hilary Swank's paycheck as well was, not cheap. I mean, not that she's, a big A-lister, but, look, I mean, she's, a big star. She's, I think, an Oscar winner, right, for $1 Million Baby. But anyway, so unfortunately we won't be getting a season 2 of that. I still have to finish season 1, which I will do, but looks like that will be the end for that. Other things to talk about. Let's Make a Deal. Yes, game shows. I love talking about game shows. So, for several weeks, they were able to do some social distancing episodes with having viewers at home play along with Wayne Brady and the cast. They did 40 of those episodes over the summer. They were supposed to film the whole season between May and August before, of course, the Corona shut down. But they weren't able to do that. The thing with game shows is, right, they'll tape the whole season in like 3 or 4 months. They'll do a whole year's worth of episodes. So they couldn't do any of that, obviously. So they did these, at-home episodes. But now they are talking about, okay, let's, bring it back to the studio, but how are we going to do it? So for the first time ever in the history of the show, the show originally aired in 1963. So this thing has been on for close to 60 years. Well, on and off. I mean, it took probably a 20-year hiatus before the Wayne Brady edition that's on now. But, on and off for 60 years. And it's been pretty much the same every time. You show up in the audience, you get a crazy costume on, they come pick you out of the audience randomly, and then you play the game. So now what they've done is they're going to have a little audience section of about 18 to 20 people, and then in 2 sides of the theater they will have 12 people, I think, total. And those will be the actual like contestants. They're not going to just randomly pick from the audience. They're going to pre-select a handful of people to play each show. So definitely going to look a little bit different, and for the first time ever, we're going to have some prime time specials for Let's Make a Deal. Sometimes they will do this with The Price is Right on CBS. They've been doing it since the Bob Barker years. I feel like even when I was like growing up in the 90s, they had some primetime Price is Right episodes. It's always like the $1 Million Spectacular or whatever. But Let's Make a Deal has never had a primetime presence with the Wayne Brady Show, so they're going to do that starting this coming week, actually. I think tomorrow or Wednesday, and then the second one will air in December, and then there's a third one slated for the spring. I mean, it kind of makes sense with, networks sort of shuffling around all of their shows and not being able to film so many for the fall. And CBS isn't going to start airing any new episodes of their fall shows until November, so that gives them, at least one more week to kind of play around with. So we'll have a Let's Make a Deal special this week. But speaking of premiere dates, CBS has finally given us premiere dates for the rest of their lineup. We talked last week about how there was like 10 CBS shows that are going to start, in the beginning and middle of November. So now we've got The Unicorn, Bull, and some of the other ones all airing that third week of November, I guess the week before Thanksgiving. So we'll have those, and then as well, Fox has given us January as the timeline for 911, 911 Lone Star, and Prodigal Son, which they're going to move Prodigal Son to Tuesdays for this season. And those all start in January. They have not given a specific date yet. I wanted to talk about this as well. It was kind of interesting. So SNL, they've been back in the studio now for a few weeks. They've done, as of now, 4 episodes. They did Chris Rock, Bill Burr, Issa Rae, and then this past weekend was Adele. Next week is John Mulaney, so that's 5 in a row, which they have never done. They've never done 5 consecutive live episodes. They did 4, I want to say, for the last election, for the 2016 election. They kicked off the season with 4 brand new episodes. Well, we have 5 now, and they've just announced a 6th live episode. So even after John Mulaney, there will be one, which makes sense because that's the week after the election. Your SNL, politics is absolutely one of, your money makers. Why would you not have a live show after the election? So I'm glad they decided to do that, but it definitely seems odd. But yeah, so they've never even done 5 consecutive episodes, and now we're going to get 6 weeks in a row for Lorne Michaels and the group at Saturday Night Live to do episodes. So that will be interesting. No word yet on who will host, but it'd be awesome if they had Dave Chappelle back. He hosted the week after Trump got elected in 2016, so it would be really cool to have him back this year. That probably won't happen, but just sort of wishful thinking. But I am looking forward to this weekend because I love John Mulaney, so that should be good. All right, so let's talk about Quibi here. So Quibi is done. It was announced late last week that, look, we tried. We kind of failed. We're going to move on here. This was a $2 billion attempt, and it just didn't make it. And there was a big letter that Jeffrey Katzenberg, the co-creator of Quibi, sort of released saying, like, look, we'll never know exactly what the issues were that, caused the demise, but we can say that it probably has to do a little bit with the coronavirus because we were designed for a, on-the-go platform, and nobody was really on the go, like, starting right around when we launched. And then he also pointed to the fact that really there were no breakout shows. He was like, we're very proud of all the shows and all the cast and the crews, but, we didn't really have that 1 or 2 shows that just broke out into the zeitgeist, which is very true, and he also cited one of my early issues with Quibi, that you couldn't get it on your television, and I don't think you can even get it on your laptop or anything. I think it's phone only, which is just, in this day and age, it's so dumb. Look, we get it. People are on their phone. They watch YouTube videos on their phone. That's fine. But people also love watching YouTube on their TVs with a Fire Stick or a Roku or whatever. And the fact that people couldn't do that with Quibi, certainly for me, that was a huge detractor. And I'm somebody who really doesn't have a commute to work. Like I've worked from home since 2001 for my full-time job, so I don't drive to work, and my part-time job, well, I drive maybe 10 minutes away, but I drive, so I can't watch my phone while I'm driving. It was made for people that were on the go, on the move. On the bus you could watch one, in a cab you could watch a Quibi. While you're working out, you could watch a Quibi. Well, guess what? Gyms were closed the first couple months Quibi was launched. And so they were working with the technology to get it on your television. And I don't know if that actually ever came to be or not, but they were working on it pretty much all summer, and they were hoping to do it, but didn't land. So here's a couple of stats about Quibi. So first of all, and he said this in the letter to everyone, that this is failing not for lack of trying. They spent $63.7 million on TV ads. And I believe it, because I've seen ads for Quibi shows, all the time. A lot of them air on Hulu, actually. But I've seen them on YouTube. I don't have cable, so I don't watch a lot of live TV, but I'm sure there was a lot of ads there as well. I would say Hulu is where I've seen the bulk of the ads, but there will be 200 jobs lost, and that's not the cast and crew of the different shows. That is just the in-house people at Quibi, the engineers for the technology, or whoever. And this was a project that was really endorsed by many people in the industry. I mean, you look at the not only just the actors, but just the studios. You look at the list of different studios that were involved with shows on Quibi. Disney, Fox, the BBC, NBC. I mean, it was really something that a lot of people wanted to succeed. I actually think I still am paying for Quibi. I did the 90-day trial, essentially so I could review it, here on the show, which I reviewed, kind of favorably. But then I'll admit, other than the Reno 911 reboot, which I reviewed here, I don't think I've actually watched any Quibi. I never followed up on any of the shows from that opening week, because it's just when you're not thinking what can I watch on my phone, and when I do watch things on my phone, it is YouTube mostly, so it wasn't really there. It had a lot of star power behind it. They did the Kiefer Sutherland version of The Fugitive. They had the Anna Kendrick show. They had, a couple of movies with big names. They had the, 50 Stages of Fright. They had the Steven Spielberg show. There were so many entertainment options, and then there were news options and sports and documentaries. Now, one of their shows, Free Deshaun, I think it was called, or hashtag Free Deshaun, won a couple of Emmys for short form entertainment. But look, it's just not enough. I mean, it's cheap to get. I think if I am still subscribed to it, I think it's only $6 a month. We could deal with that. That's fine. But when nobody's really using it or watching it, I think by the end, so the first week when they did the trial, it had 5.6 million downloads of the app, which okay, that's not bad. But you're giving away for free, so how many of those people are going to stick around? And I've read a couple different reports about that, but somewhere in the 500,000 range is paying, for the app. That's a failure. That is just a loss. So in terms of their library and what happens to it, because I really would hate to see it all just go away. All of the hard work that these, people, the cast, the crew, and the producers put into these shows and movies, I would hate for them to just vanish from the air and not be available anywhere. So they are shopping around the content. They're also shopping around the whole service, which I don't think anybody's going to buy. But I would love it if somebody bought the library of content. I don't know what the asking price is for that, but otherwise, I'm going to have to try and download it somehow or something. I don't know. I'll have to look into that as an option, because December 1st, it's gone. Originally in the statement last week, they were like, well, we're going to wind down for a few months and then see where we are, and then kind of, let it fade out that way. But nope. A couple days later, they were like, December 1st, done. So that gives people about 5 weeks to watch whatever they want on there. I mean, look, do I have time to go through a Quibi binge? Maybe. But if I do, I mean, I'm probably only going to pick 2 or 3 shows that I thought, seemed interesting from the start. I probably won't pick up on anything that they've had debut in the last few months because I didn't watch that. I remember like the Titus Burgess game show seemed interesting. The Christoph Waltz and Chris Evans movie seemed interesting. Who wants to watch a movie in 7-minute clips? Like, oh my god. What? I mean, I get the concept, but why wasn't it available on televisions? Why couldn't you get it for your Fire Stick or whatever? It's just silly. So, Quibi, that's it. We hardly knew ye. And we'll never know, like the letter said, we'll never know really what impact Corona had on this streaming service or if it just never would have taken off. Did Corona have zero effect whatsoever? I don't know. It's impossible to say. So finally in the news is our This Week in Reboots, and this one is another movie going to a TV show on a streamer. That seems to be the hot thing lately. And this one is for Flashdance. This was back when I was real little. I was probably 6 when Flashdance came out, so I don't really remember how big it was, but it was like a huge craze. The whole dumping the bucket of water on her as she's doing the dance. I mean, Deadpool even parodied it. That's, 25 years later. That's how, or 30 years later. That's how big, that this movie was. But it's going to be on Paramount Plus, which we talked about last week, is CBS All Access. But in 2021, it's going to change to Paramount Plus. So this will air eventually on what will be Paramount Plus. And I don't know many details other than the concept is kind of the same. It's going to be African American woman instead of a white gal. Well, although Irene Cara, I think might be mixed. I don't think she's white. Or maybe she could be Hispanic. I don't know. Irene Cara, she did Flashdance. She had a couple other songs. But that was it. Fame, I think, was her other one. She did Fame and Flashdance. She was in the movie. She did the songs. And that was it. That was her career. And again, I was like 6 when all that happened. So I don't remember. But I think she might be mixed or Latina. I can't remember. But anyway, this one's going to have a black gal in the lead role. But other than that, apparently the plot is going to be pretty much the same. So we'll look for that, I guess, in 2021. Obviously, nothing's really shooting yet. But all right, that's all I have for you in news. Let's get to the shows because there is 6 this week, like usual, and there's some interesting stuff in here. We're kind of gonna go all over the map. Although a lot of these do have like a dark tone. That seems to be what sells. I honestly wish there were more comedies on television right now, but that's not what's hot. Sci-fi, horror, thriller. Well, I mean, I guess this time of year too, Halloween, we want that. But so we'll start with one of the thrillers, and that is The Haunting of Bly Manor. This is over on Netflix, and it is a follow-up on The Haunting of Hill House, which I never saw, but I remember hearing about. I remember hearing it was very popular. And this follows some of the same characters, I guess, but not exactly. There's, other ones in the mix. And this is based on Henry James, wrote all the Haunting series kind of things. So this one is based on Turn of the Screw. And mainly, I guess there's a couple other elements in here of James's books that have not been yet put on film, but mainly Turn of the Screw is the catharsis for this. And what's odd about this is we just had a movie based on this called The Turning. It was maybe last Halloween, I want to say. Like, I don't think it's even been, maybe it was early 2020. I don't think it's even been a year since we've had the movie The Turning, which, by the way, was bad. But it was only mostly bad because of how it ended. Some of the things along the way I didn't think were too bad. I even, got a little scared at a few of the parts. But on the whole, I didn't grade it well because the ending is just so stupid. So I don't know how this one ends because, of course, I only watched, the first episode out of the 9 that are up. But basically, if you're unfamiliar, there's a young governess played here by Victoria Pedretti, I want to say. And she's basically hired by some dude to look after his niece and nephew at the family's estate. after, some people die, and the estate falls into his care, including the kids. And then when she arrives at the Bly estate, I should say, she sees some things and hears some things and learns some things that maybe she does not want to know. And so we have Carla Gugino as sort of the narrator here, but she plays the girl, but as an adult, sort of looking back. She's the storyteller. But as a little girl, it's Amelia Eve playing her. And then Oliver Jackson Cohen is, well, he's not playing the kid. I don't know who he is. The other kid is Raul Coley, I want to say. So this is one of these shows where if we're going to go 9 episodes deep, you don't want to, shoot your wad all in the first episode, so to speak. So a lot of episode 1 is setting up, building the, the atmosphere and that kind of thing. But because I saw the movie, I sort of, the movie got to it in about 5 minutes, where this show takes a good 25-30 minutes to sort of set everything up, because of course we have to stretch out 9 hours, whereas the movie only had 100 minutes or something to do it. So a lot of it is sort of set up, but the last 20 minutes you could definitely see where the terror is going to come from, what kind of scares we're in for, what sort of supernatural stuff is going to be present in this show. They do a very good job of establishing all of that in that last, I would say, 20 minutes or so of the first episode. There's a part where she's stuck in the closet that's very freaky. And the gal that's doing it, what's her last name? Pedretti, is, look, she's definitely, I think, the right kind of person for this. She's not necessarily naive. She's not one of these girls where you're just like, oh, come on, you're not believable. You're an idiot. She seems, to have her head about her, have her wits about her, but she does seem to maybe scare a little too easily. You could say that, I guess, but she's a good actress anyway. I don't remember seeing her in anything previously, but the thing about a show like this is, like I said, you need to kind of set that tone, set the atmosphere up, and that is something that this show excels at. Is it a little bit of a slog to get to that part? I would say yes, but again, the thing with this is the first episode is going to really all be about the setup. And I guess, even though the stories apparently are not connected at all, if you did watch The Haunting of Hill House, I think, from what I understand, you would kind of already sort of know what you're in for, whereas I didn't watch that, so I wasn't really sure. My basis for it was the movie The Turning, just because they're both based on the same work. But I guess for those that watch The Haunting of Hill House, okay, you already knew what to expect, so maybe you can go into this with, the first half hour being set up, because you're like, okay, well, if this is anything like the Hill House, this is going to be great. Whereas I didn't quite know that. But this does act as a standalone story as well. Even though some of the actors are the same, and I guess maybe some of the characters are the same, it is designed to be a standalone story. So if you never watched a second of Hill House, you can watch this and just not be lost or anything. So I appreciated that as well. And just the genuine, kind of creepy tone. But that part's all a little bit generic, the creepy, mysterious kids. You don't know what their angle is. That stuff is kind of played. So that didn't do much for me. But, the governess's reactions to things and, her interactions with the, I guess, the maid or whatever, she's played here by, I'm not sure what her name is, Tina Miller, perhaps? But, she, in the movie The Turning, it was the same thing. She had been caretaker to this house long before the kids were even born and whatever, and knows all the secrets within. Same thing here. So, they had some okay exchanges. The woman in that role always has to be, really standoffish and stuff, and we have that here. But because of all this other stuff, I've already seen the Turney movie, and it aired within the last year in theaters. This was not fresh to me at all. And I know, look, it's based on something from 120 years ago, so how fresh can it be? Really? Well, there are certainly ways, but one would be to not tell the same story within a year that another thing already did. So, because the first episode is more build up and less on the actual scary and thriller side, I can't give this too high of a grade, to be honest. But maybe if I watched the other 8, I would have a different take on it. But for now, I'm going to leave The Haunting of Bly Manor. Is that what it's called? Yes, The Haunting of Bly Manor. Sometimes I get the names a little bit confused. The Haunting of Bly Manor. I'm going to leave it with a B-. Like I said, look, if you've not seen the Turney movie, and if you loved Haunting at Hill House, you'll probably like it a lot more than I did. But I think even somebody that loved Haunting at Hill House, I think would have to admit that this does get a very slow start, and not till the last 20 minutes does it really pick up. All right, so up next, we're going to talk about a show called Next, and this is on Fox. This was originally going to come out over the summer, but with networks rearranging their schedules for the fall season, Fox decided to sort of save it and push it off into the fall. It stars John Slattery as a... I don't know if he's a billionaire, but he's certainly rich. And he was the former CEO of this tech giant called Zava, and... basically, he designed this AI that is now, sort of becoming self-aware and all of this, and has long been self-aware, I guess, and is now sort of the smartest entity on the planet, and so he is attempting to shut it down. And basically, he has a female FBI agent played by Fernanda Andrade. And she basically is with him to help him sort of uncover what's going on. And there's obviously a lot of twists and turns along the way. One of her dear friends dies in the first scene of the... Well, he doesn't die in the first scene of the episode, but he has a major car accident in the first scene of the episode because of some technology in someone else's smart car that just rams into him. So what did he know? What does he know? What is he hiding? And why was he on his way to see the John Slattery character when all this happened? So a lot to unfold here with Next. And, look, this is something where the premise is not original really at all. I mean, we've had, the machines rising up and taking over premises, for decades. I mean, one of my favorite X-Files episodes from that first season involves that. And even before that, you had like the HAL 9000. And, this has been a trope of sci-fi for I don't know how long, to be completely honest. Decades and decades, probably. At least since the 80s, I know that. But, so what do you do with it? What do you do with the tired premise? And one thing is to get a top-notch actor like John Slattery. I've always enjoyed him. Believe it or not, I know him probably least from Mad Men, because I didn't watch that show. But, I've known him for years and years. He used to be on a show called Jack and Bobby on the WB, about the Kennedys as little kids. And my buddy from Perks of Being a Wallflower was in it. Who plays Logan Lerman was one of the kids. But anyway, so I know John Slattery from way back then, and just have seen him pop up ever since. The guy is a great actor, and when I saw the promo picture for this show, I actually thought it was Bradley Whitford, because they've got Slattery in like a beard, and the way he's looking, it reminded me of Whitford in like Get Out and some of his more menacing performances. But we learn a bit about the Slattery character as we go along, including that he has less than a year to live, so he's really trying hard to try and stop this computer program that he himself created from rising up and killing everybody and taking over, or whatever it wants to do. We don't quite know yet. That's, you need a good lead, and he is commanding, that's for sure. As for everything else, look, the other actors are fine. I wouldn't say there's anything wrong with them, and there's definitely some tension here. There's a lot of, having her as the FBI gal, because she is trying at this point to lead a charge with her own group to stop this like child predator ring or whatever. And she's being pulled away from that, and so that this that she's doing might jeopardize all of that because of data that might now be compromised. There's a lot of like twists and turns here, a lot of different factors at play, and I think that's definitely making it interesting. But the premise is tired. I mean, like I said, for decades now we've been dealing with the computers will rise up sort of theme in sci-fi and dystopian type shows and movies. So, it's what you do with it. And for me, I can get behind this. I think this is an interesting enough show. It's almost like, what was it? A Person of Interest too. That was sort of, based on the CCTV stuff over on CBS that ran, I think, 3 or 4 years with like Michael Emerson and a couple other people. But, it sort of got that vibe to it a little bit as well. So, again, nothing's real fresh here, but I think at least the characters are interesting and the acting from Slattery is great. From the others, it's decent enough. So I will leave Next with a B, and that's over on Fox. Okay, so let's go to NBC. Let's go to a little bit of light for I mean, it's not super light because it still takes place during COVID, but some comedy, at least. Our only comedy show of the week. It's called Connecting, and it is basically based around the COVID concept and the, everybody being at home and doing the Zoom calls. And it's not like Zoom on here, but it's some sort of video conferencing service. And obviously this is something that NBC did not expect to have on their fall schedule, but none of their fall shows are ready yet. I think they're starting premieres this week. I know Superstore's new this week, but a lot of their premieres don't start until next year. But so they have put together this show basically with a group of friends. I don't know if they're all over the U.S. or if they're all just sort of on the West Coast, but they're all friends that I got the sense that they usually hang out on a regular basis. So I think these guys are all, in the same city at least, if not even closer. I don't think they're in the same neighborhood, but I think they're all within maybe a few miles of each other. They usually get together, but then COVID is hit. And, like you'd expect, we get a lot of different archetypes here. We have, the gay married couple. We only see the one guy, which makes sense because it's COVID. So, these are all being shot remotely, obviously. But he's played by Parvesh Cheena, who you may remember as being on the show Outsourced, the one-season classic from about 15 years ago that they were really trying to pawn off as the new Friends. And the only other person I recognize on this show is Preacher Lawson, who was, I think, America's Got Talent. It was either AGT or Last Comic Standing, but he was on one of the NBC shows. I think it was America's Got Talent. And he's definitely not, like, doing shtick here. Like, I remember liking his stand-up, but he's definitely playing a little bit more dramatic. And that's the thing. This show isn't like a laugh-out-loud, typical, set-up joke sitcom. It's slice-of-life kind of stuff. There are some laughs. I definitely laughed a few times because, it is real people being real and being funny and whatever. But they're not doing shtick. They're not doing bits. And a lot of it does get pretty heavy. I watched the first 2 episodes of this, and they each tell you at the beginning of it, like, what day it is. So the first episode takes place in, like, March or early April when it first happened, and then episode 2 takes place 30 days in. So, and it'll go on like that. But, look, it's taking a look at things that we've all been through. One of the gals who is trans is going through a cut in her pay because she lost her job at the restaurant, and she's still got to try and pay for her meds, so she's being like a food delivery person. And then this guy and gal are sort of have like a little love thing going on, but she hasn't told him yet, and he's still kind of with his ex, and his ex wants to move in with him for the COVID and all of this. So it's things that, when I say we've all been through, I don't mean all of us have been through all of these things, but, things like job loss and things like getting sick of your spouse, and your kids, because of the COVID, and being lonely. And one of the girls in the show, of course, is a healthcare worker, so we've got her story to look at, and all of that. So look, there have been several shows now in COVID, scripted shows, that have sort of gone either way. Freeform did that Love in the Time of Corona a few months ago, and I think it's interesting because none of these shows, of course, would have existed otherwise. It's opened up sort of a mini niche of shows. Even the reality type shows. You had the or Celebrity Show Off on TBS. Where celebrities were doing different videos from their homes, and so it's opened up this whole new sub-genre, I guess you could call, like Corona TV or something like that, or COVID TV. But this one really, I think, does hit a lot of the things that we all are going through or have gone through at some point in this last 7-8 months. And so I think that makes it very real, but it is, slated as a comedy, so make no mistake, it's not going to be like This Is Us, where it's all very dramatic. There's definitely some lighthearted moments, because I think that is so important right now, to look at sort of the lighter side of some of this, which there is. That being said, a lot of the, social distancing app, tech glitches and that sort of, that's kind of old hat by this point. Like, SNL was doing jokes about that back in April and May when they were doing the live from home shows. And, obviously the talk shows have done bits about that. So that stuff is sort of, at this point, old hat, but they don't really rely on any of that stuff. Like, most of this show is more geared towards the written word. It's more geared towards the characterization of these people, which I really appreciated. I really liked that. Look, not everything works. It's obviously sort of gimmicky a little bit because of where we are right now. But I gotta say, of all the COVID-themed shows that we've gotten since April, this is probably the best of them. It'll be interesting once COVID is over, if NBC decides to keep this show going. Do they bring it out into the real world where these people can now hang out and see each other, and maybe this does become, more of a Friends or a How I Met Your Mother or something, and less of an outsourced, let's say, but less of a gimmicky social distancing show, because if people like these characters, then obviously we'd like to see them in the real world too. So for now, I leave Connecting with a B+. I thought this was really well done, and could have gone many different ways, I think. So up next, we're going to talk about a show that's actually over a year old, but it's new to a lot of us, and that is Swamp Thing. So this premiered on DC Universe, which is about to sort of fold as a streaming service and will be more of a like a comic archive sort of thing for DC Comics, because Warner Brothers owns that, and they also own HBO Max. So a lot of the shows from DC Universe are going to be produced now for HBO Max, like the Harley Quinn show. But Swamp Thing was canceled after one season, so I don't think we'll get any more of this. But the CW has just started airing this first season because, again, people are just trying to find things to fill their gaps for the fall season, and the CW is also owned by Warner Brothers, so and they have all the DC shows. They have the Arrowverse, they call it, with Arrow and the Flash and Supergirl and all that. So Swamp Thing seems like a perfect fit for the CW in that regard as well. So my guess is, if it actually does really well in its CW airings, maybe they will renew it and rescue it from cancellation. I think that's very possible. But for now, we do have the first season, and let's talk about episode 1. So if you're not, completely familiar with Swamp Thing, as I am not, I guess the basics, but essentially, Swamp Thing is this plant creature dude who became how did he become? Oh, because there was like this bone virus thing, and so Alec Holland is the character's name, and he's like this disgraced scientist, and he dies, and then we find out, well, maybe, there's some other things going on. And the lead gal here is Crystal Reed. She plays Abby Arcane, who is a CDC doctor trying to figure out exactly, what happened with this epidemic in her hometown. So, this was surprisingly good, I thought. Virginia Madsen has sort of a co-starring role, although I think she's only in one scene of the first episode, or maybe two. But her daughter died from this, I guess, and she sort of has a sit down with Abby, and they sort of discuss what's going on, and she's like, "Look, we'll figure out what's going on, but you need to sort of be careful and this and that." She's sort of like menacing, I guess. But here's what's mostly so good about this show that I think brings it above certainly the other DC shows that I've seen, is the atmosphere. Swamp Thing is not necessarily a superhero like Arrow, like the Flash. This is definitely designed to be more of a thriller type show. Not horror necessarily, but certainly thriller. And as such, there is, a lot of spooky stuff going on. And one thing I really appreciated was this uses practical effects for what we see with the Swamp Thing. Now, we don't really see a lot of the Swamp Thing in the first episode because it sort of, doesn't get... we don't really find out what's going on with that until towards the end of the first episode. So obviously we'll see a lot more with that. But look, this is executive produced by James Wan, who you might know from the Conjuring franchise, and he was the co-creator of Saw. So this dude obviously knows how to get, certain emotions from an audience. He knows how to deliver some atmosphere. He knows how to really get us in a place of fear. And obviously this show is not going to go as far as the Saw franchise, although I suppose on DC Universe it could have, because they certainly let the expletives fly. But the CW version is going to be an edited version of the show, because not only, the language and stuff, but the original episodes of Swamp Thing are like 55 minutes to an hour, and obviously DC Universe can do that. CW cannot, so they have to be more like 42, 43 minutes. So there's about 12 minutes, 13 minutes cut out of this episode, and definitely, I don't know if it made it feel completely disjointed, but there were a couple things I had to look up, I'll be honest, that I was like, all right, I don't know the history of this character, this comic book at all. Did I miss something? And in most cases, I wouldn't say I did, but it was nice sort of to know the background as well. So, I think if you're going to watch Swamp Thing, I would recommend not doing it on the CW. And I would say get the DVD of it and watch it that way. Or I guess maybe you could still watch it on DC Universe while it still exists as a streamer. For the time being, but that would be my recommendation, and I don't care about, you can see the expletives or whatever, but I just think for storyline purposes, I think it would be better. It's kind of like when Sex and the City went into syndication, or The Sopranos. It's like, you had this half-hour show or an hour-long show with The Sopranos, and then in syndication it was like 42 minutes, and you're like, all right, well, yeah, they cut out the boobs and stuff at the Bada Bing Club, but they also cut out a couple of sort of side plots or whatever. So that would be my recommendation. But atmospherically, this show is really great. I think, production value wise, this is the top tier of the DC Universe shows. And I don't mean the streamer DC Universe, I mean the Arrowverse. And I don't know if this falls under the Arrowverse umbrella, because I feel like it's in a different sort of world, I guess. But I really liked what I saw of Swamp Thing. I thought it was interesting. Again, we didn't see the character really until the very end, but that's okay, because it's the first episode and it's an origin story, and hopefully in the next few episodes we'll really sink our teeth into the character. But for now, I'll leave Swamp Thing with a B. Okay, so let's see. I think what we have one more show, two more shows, two more shows. All right, let's talk about Tehran. This is on Apple TV Plus. I will try to speed through these because we're already at about 45 minutes. I try to keep these, under an hour. But this is a very interesting show. There's a lot going on in it, first of all. But the basic premise is that this is another thriller. This is like more of a spy thriller, though. We have a Mossad agent here who goes deep undercover on a mission to basically get some nuclear stuff, and they're on a plane in the very first episode, which has to sort of make an emergency landing, and she's going to basically be a hacker in her home of Tehran, but she is the protagonist, so we have a lot of mixed feelings about this character. She's being forced to do it, and so at the same time, there's just other. I don't want to say couple, they're friends, but it's a guy and a girl, but he makes it pretty clear he's gay in the first scene, because he's like, oh, well, they're not, I'm gay, like, we can't land here, like, they're gonna not love me. And this is originally aired, I guess, on Iranian TV or something like that, or Israeli TV, I'm sorry, so in Israel, that Apple TV Plus has picked up. So a lot of it is subtitled, I will say that. If you're not into the subtitles, a lot of it's in Hebrew or Persian. There is some of it that's in English, but for the most part, you're definitely going to want to, focus on this, as, a lot of it will be subtitled for you. But anyway, at the same time, this couple sort of gets mixed up with everything, and we're not sure if maybe they do have something to do with it or not. From the first episode, it looks like they don't, but a couple things that happen that you're like, oh, well, maybe there's some sort of part of it. I don't know yet. So, like Apple does, they rolled out the first 3 episodes at once, and then it's one a week after that, although this started airing about a month ago, so I think there's only like 2 episodes left to go. But I don't know any of these actors, because they are all Israeli television and movie stars, I guess. So, or maybe they're even new to Israelis. I don't know. But Niv Sultan, Sean Taub, Navid Negban, and Liraz Sharhi, I want to say maybe, are the main 4 people in the movie, and it's really the couple on the plane, and then the other couple on the plane that is doing the terrorism. And they're sort of the 4 main characters. How they're connected, if they're connected, not sure yet. This was pretty compelling, although, as you might be able to tell from my description, it's there's a lot going on. It's a little convoluted yet, so I'm not exactly sure where everybody fits in, and I think that's what they want, but this is certainly in the vein of classic, spy TV shows, like, I don't know, you could liken this maybe to 24. Like, there's definitely a lot of, like, international, terrorism kind of stuff at play here. Just none of it happens to take place in America or with Americans, like 24. So, but it's definitely got that vibe to it. It doesn't have, obviously, the real-time factor, but, although I guess, the first episode does take place all over the course of probably 3 hours, so it's not quite in real time, but there's sort of that element of immediacy to it, but it's very intriguing. I think there's too much going on, certainly. I think even this first episode, it really took a long time to figure out what exactly people's premises are, and there's a lot of things at play with, like, international law that I wasn't sure if it was real or not. And I guess it is, so, I like the authenticity of it, even though I didn't quite know it at the start. But the acting here is pretty good. It's always, honestly, kind of hard to tell with international movies and TV shows, because sometimes, if you don't know exactly what they're saying, and the subtitles usually don't do it, word for word. Sometimes it does, but it's kind of hard to tell. So I sort of grade acting in an international property on a little bit of a curve. Like, you can tell some things with facial expressions and stuff, but I will admit it is a little hard sometimes to say, okay, well, that was a good line read, or that was a good performance, but everybody seems fine here. I'm just not quite sure where it goes from here, if people are making smart decisions for their characters. So far, it seems like I'm a little on the fence about that. There's some smart decisions, and some I'm like, well, I don't know why you're saying that or why you're doing that, but maybe we'll find out. I'm not sure. So there's a lot up in the air here, but I think there's a lot to like with Tehran. So I will leave it with a B-. Everything so far this week is kind of in that range. But not anymore, because we get to the last show, which is SoulMates. This is on AMC. This has already been renewed for season 2. This got renewed 2 months ago, long before the premiere. So obviously AMC is behind it. But it is an anthology series, so each episode will be different. I think there's going to be 8 in the first season. Oh, well, there's 6 listed, so maybe there's only 6 in the first season. But basically, we're set a bit in the future, not too long, about 15 years. And what happens is this thing, this new app or whatever, this new company has created a program that matches you with your one soulmate. The soulmate. And I guess it's not really all over the world, because at least in this first episode, everybody seems to at least sort of be in the same general vicinity. If my one true soulmate was in, like, I don't know, Korea or Brazil or something, it's like that would be a little bit difficult. So here, they're all kind of, linked in, but, obviously the other person has to also go into the service to, fill out the questionnaire and all of that. So it's, basically some sort of computer dating thing, but with a much, it's like, number one, this is your soulmate, cut and dry, the end. And so basically each episode will take a look at different couples and stuff. Here's my biggest problem with this show, is that it has nowhere to go. Like, and I read the synopses for the other 2 episodes. I watched the first episode, read the synopses for the other 2 that have aired, and it's all like basically the same thing. Like, SoulMates, the program has, these people, and they're telling them, okay, this is your soulmate. And, in the first episode, the one woman is married, and so she has to make a decision, do I stick with my husband, who maybe I've been having some problems with, or do I try and find my one true soulmate, according to this, computer program. And those types of, like, crises of faith and such. So it's a great premise, again, not something I don't think we've never seen before, but interesting enough, I suppose. But the problem is, if this is an anthology series and we get different characters every time, how are we supposed to care about any of them? Like, there's some anthologies where, and I would say most anthologies, have to sort of establish their characters right away, because you're only going to see them in that one episode. And sometimes you don't even need to do that, because other factors are at play. If it's more, horror-driven or whatever, then you just have to work on the scares rather than the characterization. But this is a very character-driven premise, and if we meet new characters every single time, but they're all connected through the same thing, it's just going to get boring. Like Modern Love, for example, on Amazon, which is not an anthology series that I loved. I think I gave it like a C. It's okay. Slattery's in that too, by the way, with Tina Fey. But every episode of that's different. But they're all taking different looks at love from different types of ways and different perspectives. This is all centered around this computer program called Soul Connects. So, with that in mind, there's only so many places you can go. The fact that this was renewed for season 2, it's like, unless we're going to bring back all these original characters and do their storylines all over again, a year later, like, okay, well, what did they decide to do? Are they going to deal with... It's like we never find out what happens. It's just a waste of a show, it seems like to me. This is not the kind of premise I think that goes with an anthology series, to be honest. So, didn't care for it. I mean, the first episode was fine, but the fact that I'll never see those characters again, most likely, it just kind of leaves me high and dry, So I leave SoulMates with a D+. So there you go. They're not all in the B range this week. Most of them are. Most of them were good, or at least passable, or at least I saw potential. This one, SoulMates, not so much. All right, so that we're going to wrap it there. There's a bunch of new shows. I keep saying that I'm like a week behind. I keep trying to get these up like within every 5 or 6 days instead of every 7 days because I'm like a couple of weeks behind at this point. But I want to review Supermarket Sweep for sure because I love game shows. You know that. Leslie Jones is hosting Supermarket Sweep, so I want to watch that. And as always, there's a couple of new Netflix shows to get to. Luckily, the fall TV season has sort of skewered the networks a little bit, so I don't have a ton of network stuff to do. But like Next and like Swamp Thing, we can sort of get things that maybe aired elsewhere or were supposed to air earlier in the year. So there might be 1 or 2 new fall shows we can talk about on the networks, but most of it I think is going to be streaming for the next few weeks anyway. But that will do it. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.